hello, and welcome to Sim Radio here on the Sisters in Music Network. It's Monday Music Madness, and you're tuned into Mixing It with Nicki Kris. This is Nicki, and in case you don't know anything about me, I'm a singer-songwriter from Raleigh, North Carolina. My show celebrates women and men in the music and entertainment industry, providing an avenue for them to showcase their talents. Our motto, Sisters in Music, together we are stronger. My guest today is an indie rock-pop singer-songwriter, a skilled guitarist, and multi-instrumentalist based in Philadelphia. Known for her distinctive sound and expressive lyricism, her latest release, Arena, is the latest addition to her growing discography, offering listeners a glimpse into her eclectic musical universe. I'm so excited to have her on the show. Y'all are just going to absolutely love her. So please join me in welcoming the wonderful Lily Enos. Welcome to Mixing It, Lily. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me, Nicki. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
You are quite welcome. And I am very excited to share you and your music with all of our listeners. So let's get right to it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in music?
I was born in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey, so I'm from down the shore, and I was very fortunate to grow up in a family that really loves music and is very passionate in their own ways about music. So from when I was very young, both my mom and dad exposed me to just a vast array of different artists, ranging from all the way from the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, and then into the 90s and aughts. My dad is actually a singer-songwriter and a very artistic person, and so was his father. And, you know, my mom was also a really big music nerd, and I could remember her with like a briefcase of burned CDs that, she would share with me on car rides, and I would see her on weekends. And, and the rest of my family really shared a lot of really great artists with me that, I wouldn't know who Johnny Mathis or Barbra Streisand were if it weren't for my grandparents. So it's just some really interesting connections musically were made growing up. And I think that really made for a catalyst that led me to get curious about singing, and I always expressed myself through singing, and it just kind of started out that way.
I love that. I love it when I hear from artists that they actually had so much musical influences directly from family members, or that other family members were active in the music industry, because it just shows how wonderful that type of environment is for budding artists. Because I've also talked to people, and, including myself, where it's like, oh, you want to do what? And it's like a completely different environment to when your parents and family members are very supportive. So I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I had some family members like that were very much, they were a little more straight-laced, where, you bring up your love of the arts and you get the whole, you're going to die penniless if you go down that road. And, so you do have some, maybe like an extended family or friends that can be, like to play devil's advocate. And they have their reasons about that. Maybe it's their weird way of trying to protect you from something, so I can empathize with it in a way. But I experienced some of that too.
Yeah, it's really, really tough because I don't really understand it. I guess that's trying to protect, but at the same point in time, and this is the one thing, because I actually have a son who's interested in doing music. I'm like, look, it's a hard road. It's not easy. You obviously need to be able to support yourself, because the,
Absolutely.
$1 million record deal and all of that stuff, those are few and far between, right? That they don't happen as much as they used to, right? Especially with all of the things going on where everybody can self-release and things like that. And yes, do they have to happen? Absolutely. Of course they do. But I'm never going to tell you not to do this. Just as long as you pay your bills and
pay your bills, do your taxes, don't be in trouble with the IRS, and you'll be okay.
You'll be okay. I love it. So you mentioned an eclectic group of musical superstars being exposed to many different genres growing up. Do you have any specific influences that maybe you might be drawing from in your own music, and maybe influences that aren't musical? Tell us about your influences.
Sure. So, it really is hard to pin down. If I'm thinking of with my latest release, Arena, right off the bat, I immediately think about acts like Bjork or Radiohead or even, Damon Albarn with the Gorillaz, where that strange meshing of sound and almost like the random utilization of sound, which is very, I think, very present in Arena, especially because it starts out very sleepy and unassuming, and then it goes into this highly climatic bridge where there's trumpets, it's a brass section, it's very rock and roll, and but there's nothing that would suggest coming. And so I like kind of messing with spontaneity, and so I think about those artists in particular where I think spontaneity is a big part of what they do. And then there's other songs that I think are a little more, you sort of play it through and it is what it is throughout the song. It's not really throwing you for quite a loop. And as far as just where I'm approaching things from a songwriting perspective, I really look to a lot of classics, and I reference them all the time in other opportunities I've had to talk, like Carole King and James Taylor, or even the Carpenters, even Burt Bacharach and the work that he's done with artists, or even Hal David and his work that he did with Burt Bacharach, that they did with other people. Even more contemporaries like Dido or Alanis Morissette. That's just naming a few, but those are some of the ones that come to mind when I'm thinking of like a North Star that I look to from a songwriting standpoint.
That is such a massive, powerful group. I haven't heard anyone that I've ever talked to mention Dido. I love her. In my opinion, like totally underrated. Totally underrated.
Oh, completely. Like criminally underrated.
Yes. Yeah, it's like Pink. I'm like, how can I?
Yeah.
Pink, in my opinion, is totally underrated. I'm just like,
yeah, I really think, especially like her early stuff. I think Pink's like early aught stuff had a sophistication to it, and just like vocally as well. She's really cool. I have a lot of respect for her as well.
Absolutely, one of my faves. Well, this is actually a perfect spot for us to share and talk about the first song that you brought with you. It happens to be your current release. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Arena?
Arena is funny in the sense that when you listen to it, I think it just comes off as like almost like a love song, and it's somebody, professing that come hell and high water and I'll fight for you, you can be sure I love you. It's very pie in the sky in that way. But really what I wrote the song about, I actually wrote that song when I was around like 17 or 18, and I was just getting out of high school, and I was very angsty, and I wrote it about, I'll just say it was like cat fights, like seeing other people my age who at the time who would put themselves in compromising positions or sort of lower themselves to violence over what they thought was love at that time. And it's kind of a bit of a like comedic sort of piss take on that there's a certain gravitas and drama and seriousness to the song that juxtaposes what I was really observing at the time.
Well, I absolutely love it, and we are going to play this. You're welcome. You're welcome. No, really, I absolutely love it. We're going to play it for everybody right now. This is Arena by Lily Enos. One of the things that I absolutely love about this song and why I wanted you to tell everyone what it was about is because I love the stripped back vibe of the song, and your songwriting is very, very straightforward, which actually now makes sense based upon a lot of the artists that you named, you know, like Carpenters. Your writing definitely reminds me of what I would call like really straightforwardness, not very, I don't know, some of the writing today, it's just like you look at some of the stuff and you're like, what the heck are you talking about? Right? No, I mean,
like it tries to be, I think people try to be very metaphorical, and they try to, it's like reaching with the figurative language, and then it's almost like, okay, well, what are you really rooted in your own experience? And that's, I think, where you can tell, you know, sincerity from insincerity in someone's musical presence.
Exactly. You said it better than I did. So, but that's one of the reasons why I actually really, I really, really love the song, because even the production it's not something that, you know, it's stripped back. It's very, I don't want to say simple, but it is very simple. It's simple, but it's empowering, right? It's simple and powerful. Like less is actually more in this sense. And I thought it was an absolutely great song. I mean, I think it's awesome. So congrats.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
You are quite welcome. And I'm going to actually tag in on that because I would like to talk a little bit more about your songwriting process, how you write songs. Everybody does things a little bit differently. So tell us a little bit about your process.
There isn't one. It's very it's hard because it can really range from just a moment where you sing something to yourself or hear something in your head and it's a fragment that you end up slowly kind of sculpting and molding something out of, to being in this rare sort of almost like kind of serendipitous place where it all comes to you at once. And I kind of volley between those two extremes a lot of the time, I notice. So sometimes, I'll be walking somewhere, or I'll just be kind of like sitting with myself, or maybe in the shower, as cliche as that sounds, it's kind of true. You hear a melody line or even there's just like a phrase and you're like, oh, I have to document this. I have to document this. And then sometimes if I'm playing guitar, it'll kind of work in the opposite direction, where it's less about the line and the melody and it's more about something I'm doing on guitar that could make sense in the context of a song. And then in that instance, it's a lot of it sort of coming out at once. But it's so haphazard, and I never really approach it as like, okay, I'm sitting down and writing a song today.
I don't do that either. I hear a lot of people, they always recommend, write a song a day, even if it's just a line or two. And I'm just not that person. I am a binge writer. I can't do it because to me it's almost then becomes forced. And you're like forcing something to happen. And to me, those end up being songs that I usually am like, nope, not recording this. Tossed away.
Exactly.
It's always the ones that like pop up when you're doing something quirky or you hear some type of musical melody and you're like, I'm hearing these lyrics in my head. Let's play off of this, things like that. And those are the ones that you usually end up putting out into the world because they just are so much more meaningful. So I'm happy to hear that other people write that way too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I really think that it all ties back to, what of yourself are you putting into the song? And I think that if you start treating it like a homework assignment and you start treating it like, okay, I'm prompting myself to write, it's less about you and it's more about the task of writing. And then people aren't really hearing you in that.
Totally agree. All right. One of the questions that I ask all of my songwriters, do you have a songwriting tip or trick that you would like to share?
I'm probably the worst person to get advice about this on. It's hard. I mean, I can only say that when I was younger, I remember I felt like the only time that I could or should write was when I was feeling badly. And I took that very seriously, of like, I have to be in this very serious, very morose kind of mood. And, I think it went with the age for sure. But don't pigeonhole yourself to be affixed to a certain emotion or a certain state of being, or you don't have to look for something big to write about, because you'd be surprised how very seemingly mundane observations can become lines in songs. Like, for example, a song that I have called Record Timing, I remember the first line for that song, which was actually one of the later lines I wrote in looking for a line to write, was the gym on a Saturday, hours and hours devoted to the rest of your life. And really, it's such a weird and kind of random line, but syllabically, it worked with the melody. So it's okay to write things that are almost kind of random, or things that almost appear very randomly in your mind, if they help carry and serve the song rhythmically or syllabically in some way, just let everything inspire you.
I do that all the time. I write down like random thoughts, weird things that come to mind. I have like one-line song idea, where it's just like going,
yeah,
one title word.
That's always how it kind of is with me. It's a line, and then you build around it.
Yep. Oh, so cool. All right. Well, that's a great tip or trick. So, peeps, make sure that you have like a piece of paper, voice memos, all of that fun stuff, so that when you think of something, all you have to do is hit record, write it down. There you go. You never know. Use it. All right. Great place for us to take a short break here from a word from one of our partners in podcasting. This is Chatting with Nat. We will be right back here with Mixing It with Nicki Kris on the Sim Radio Network.
Chatting with Nat is a podcast for independent women seeking to speak their truth and to break down barriers. We host honest conversations that help to guide and empower women. Speak your truth and set yourself free. Let your voice be heard.
And we're back on Mixing It with Nicki Kris on the Sim Radio Network, and my awesome guest, singer-songwriter Lily Enos. Lily, what motivates you to be a musician?
Really just, it's always been part of me. I think it's almost like cutting off a limb or something if I don't tap into that part of myself. So really it's the need to satiate all parts of myself that inspires me to be musical, because I am musical, and I can't separate from that.
And I can certainly relate, because I have tried the opposite with the, hey, let's go do real life and not do this, and let me tell you, that does not work. You're just like, holy, something is definitely missing, something is definitely wrong. So I envy you that you have stuck with that and just like continue to say, nope, this is me, this is part of me, I'm going to just continue to do it. So that's fantastic.
Well, it's definitely not an easy thing. It's like one thing to have that part of you, and then it's another thing to find those opportunities to nurture that part of yourself. Because real life is always happening, and then, kind of what we spoke to before, the importance of kind of supporting yourself, and you can't be so pretentious as to be like, well, what's money or what's real life anyway? Like you have these inevitable obligations that are always kind of pulling you away from the creativity, and I think the mission is seeing where there's an intersect and how creativity can coexist with your real life.
And I actually really agree with that, because one of the things that I have seen morph or start to really come to the forefront is a lot of artists with the dual personas, if you will, of, yeah, I have a day job, but I also do this, right? Like it's, my passion continues to drive gigging, and we're going to talk about how you get ready for a gig in a minute, but, my passion continues to drive me to go out and perform or release music, write music. It's very evident that there's definitely a new group of musical artists being born, if you will, or starting to come to light of, hey, yeah, I maybe do the 9 to 5, but the 5:30 to midnight also happens. Or, I'm doing podcasts or doing things like that. So I've definitely seen like a shift over the past couple of years where a lot more individuals are now embracing those dual personas, if you will.
It's almost like the rock star in a way is kind of dead in a way, and people are more are more privy to this idea that people are multifaceted, and that it's not just like, okay, I'm a musician and therefore this is just me and this is my role and I'm the musician. And I mean, I'm sure that there are rare cases where that is possible, and you have people who have built their careers from decades ago that were able to realize that in that way. But you are absolutely right, because I actually work as a mental health therapist, and I, spent, the former chunk of my day today with that hat on. And then now I take that hat off and it's, musician hat that's on. So you're absolutely right.
I can't wait to see what the next couple of years bring. And thank you for the role that you do in the mental health industry, because that's very important. And you are actually not the first person that I have spoken to as of late that has a similar type of career as a, day to day. I'm actually seeing a lot more of that in, mental health industry, a lot more artists really starting to, maybe do that during the day, but then express themselves as musicians, songwriters, performers, and things like that outside of that. So I think that that's fantastic. All right, let's switch gears. How do you get ready for a gig?
Dissociating. No, well, I'm kind of half kidding. But in a way, it is kind of true that I do think that there's a certain mode that I get into where I need a lot of solitude, and it's almost like going on like human power save mode in a way, where like I feel not quite as conversational, I'm not as chatty, I'm not as open, because I'm trying to preserve all of that energy for when I go out on stage or present to people. Because I think if you do that the right way, you feel absolutely depleted afterwards, and it's the closest thing to like some kind of religious experience, and it's very all-consuming, and it takes a lot out of you. So sort of going into that place that's very inward beforehand, and just sort of being, and not draining that social battery, so to speak, is a big part of my process.
I'm the opposite. I get really chatty.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I get really, really chatty. I'm not a, I kind of like get like really hyped up. And then by the time I get on stage, it's like the fire hose is like opened. So, but
I think that's great.
Anyway,
I think, it's like you kind of like prime yourself, and, that adrenaline, you're already kind of taking advantage of that adrenaline. So it's not just like sitting there dormant and then it all comes out like a powder keg, So I think it's cool to hear your approach.
I can't just be quiet. I'm like a social butterfly all over the place.
No, that's awesome.
It's the only way it works. It's the only way it works. So before we get to the second song that you brought with you, what other projects are you currently working on? Are you working on any other releases? Are you working on like an album? Give us a lowdown on what you're currently working on.
So I am working on an album. In fact, the single Arena that came out is going to be on this album, and everything that we release as a single after that will also be on the full-length project. So everything I'm doing now is sort of in pursuit of, a larger cohesive work, which, it's a weird, I think it's a weird pursuit to have in this day and age, especially because we're so like single dependent, and it's very, people don't really listen to full length albums like they used to, or they don't necessarily consume it in the same way that they used to. So, it's a strange, it's definitely, I think for my age group and my generation, it's a different goal to want to do a full length project, but have to be the contrarian and just do it my way and that's what I'm sort of after right now, is an album.
Let's get to the second song that you brought with you. Could you tell us a little bit about Retaliation?
Sure. So Retaliation was actually written around a similar point in time as Arena. I was actually living in Delaware when I wrote that song with my dad, and we were going through a really hard time there. He was in a relationship that was kind of falling apart and wasn't what either of us thought it was going to be, and there was a lot of vulnerability. And so it's really sort of speaking to this particular individual and sort of what I interpreted as their transgressions. But it's also, I think in general, it's kind of like a call to action to not be a piece of crap, and trying to reach out and trying to not be selfish, and how do you show that you can move forward from hardship. And I think the song musically really captures sort of the tension of that as you kind of try to work towards the release of that.
Well, it is another fantastic song, and we are going to play it for everyone. This is Retaliation by Lily Enos.
Nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Oh, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Oh, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Oh, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Oh.
the things that I really like about that song is it's very like jazz funky. Like it's a completely different vibe than the first song that we shared, than Arena. And you have a really nice, unique blend of instruments on it. And it really showcases like two totally different aspects of your writing. I think it's an absolutely awesome song.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And kudos to your dad, too, then. If he's also a co-writer, that's awesome. All right. Well, before we sign off, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners, maybe any upcoming shows where they can find you on social media? What would you like to share?
So I can be found pretty much anywhere on the internet as Lily Enos, LILYENOS, or by my social media handles at Lily Enos Official. And that's basically what I go by on all the socials. Instagram, Facebook, Threads especially has been a really cool outlet for me recently. And I also have an official website, www.lilyenos.com. That's where all of my event dates are and sort of is the main hub for all of my work.
All righty. Well, I would like to thank my wonderful guest, Lily Enos, for taking the time to chat with me today. Absolute pleasure getting to meet you, know you, and chat about your music. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Mixin' It. On behalf of all of us here at Sim Radio, this is Nicki Kris. Until next time, keep on mixing it.